Chunsoft has announced and unveiled Steins Gate Reboot's Steam store page, confirming a 2026 release, as well as English and Chinese localizations. As many of us had expected, since Mages tagged Chunsoft's English account at the time they announced Reboot's delay, it's looking like this is going to be a simul release between Japanese, English, and Chinese. Surprisingly, there is no mention of an English or Chinese dub on the Steam page. Perhaps this will be changed later down the line like it was for Anonymous Code. Dubs are pretty expensive, but I think it would be a real shame to stop doing them. And given that there is quite a significant number of Steins Gate fans who don't get into the VNs due to not having the English voice actors in-game, I think a dub would be worthwhile. But as of this time, there is no indication that there will be a dub. And we also do not know who is translating the game. I hope that Steiner and Blickwinkel return for the localization, and I even have a sneaking suspicion that at least Steiner is on board. But as of this time, there is no explicit confirmation from anybody. Speaking of the localization, when Mages had announced the reboot delay a few days ago, they had also changed the logo subtext yet another time, this time matching what we had of the in-game translation of the Steins Gate prologue. So at long last, it actually reads well, and it was not taken from a decade-old typo-ridden mistranslation from the Steins Gate fandom wiki the way the original reboot subtitle was. On a separate note, regarding release platforms, besides Steam, we do not know where Reboot is set to release as of now. I would expect that given both the original Steins Gate and Steins Gate Elite exist with a max resolution of 1080p, that at least one version of Reboot will have native 4K resolution. In Mages' announcement of Reboot's delay, they mentioned that they were making Reboot with the intent of modernizing Steins Gate and making it accustomed to the current gaming environment, such as through increasing the game's resolution. So evidently, this seems to be in reference to the current console generation. So whether it be the confirmed Steam port, or a possible port for the PS5, Switch 2, or perhaps the Series X, though that's less likely, it's fair to assume that there will be 4K assets and 4K support on at least one version of the game at launch. Moving on to the Steam page, and we get a slew of interesting details. In Chunsoft's announcement tweet, they started off by saying, "And now, everything will be rebooted." And then the beginning of its description on the Steam store page mentions that there will be an all-new story. In the middle of the description, it mentions that there will be an original new scenario that'll expand the world's story. And then towards the end of the Steam description, it mentions that these brand new scenarios will make it so that both newcomers and longtime fans can experience Steins Gate like never before, making it a true reboot. This is very intentional phrasing from what it seems. But what could it all mean? Just how original is this remake going to be? Many have taken these points in the game's description to mean that, like a lot of us had suspected, this might be more than just a simple conventional remake. Obviously, the material released thus far does correspond to what we've seen up to the end of Chapter 1 of the original game, and some of the other parts of the description would hint at the majority of it being along the lines of a conventional remake. For instance, in terms of length, it would be about as long as the original Steins Gate. But since their marketing has strongly emphasized that this will have a new original story for at least part of it, it does make me wonder what will be different. It could be just a few small additions, like maybe a reference to Maho or two, it could be an additional Moeka route, or it could be something incredibly ambitious, like a dramatically different story halfway through the game designed to set up the next couple of SciADV games. Some days back, longtime SciADV translator Steiner, or Andrew Hodgson, had tweeted that his expectations for Reboot are hedged, and that he thinks that while the diehard fans definitely want this to be a twist meta sequel given the implications of Anonymous Code, he thinks that the safe play for Mages would be for it to be little more than a conventional remake. After all, that would be the cost minimizing move, and it would be the less polarizing move given the tendencies of the Japanese Steins Gate only audience. Honestly, I would be so disappointed if Reboot was just a conventional remake. Like, do we really need another one? Given Mages' financial circumstances, and that Steins Gate's fans will buy the game no matter what they end up doing, Mages making it a conventional remake is not out of the question, but I remain optimistic that we might get something special, even if the majority of the game ends up matching what we see in the original. As I alluded to earlier, one interesting thing of note from the Steam description is that the game is set to be 30 to 50 hours long, which is the same time length they advertised the original Steins Gate to be. Because of this, I've seen some speculate that Steins Gate Reboot's additional content might not be that substantive. But another possibility is that even with Reboot being roughly the same length as the original Steins Gate, that a good chunk of the story just ends up being different. And as usual with Steins Gate Reboot, I cannot discuss this game in the absence of the context of the rest of the series. So from this point onwards, I will be discussing full series spoilers for SciADV all the way up to Anonymous Code. So as many of you are asking yourselves, when is Steins Gate Reboot supposed to take place, given the simulation reboot at the end of Anonymous Code? Is Steins Gate Reboot on some random world layer before the world line collapse? Or is it after the world line collapse, thereby giving the title Reboot a double meaning? And if it is after the world line collapse, how could it work without the events of Chaos at Noah, considering that 1, Steins Gate's mechanics are somewhat dependent on Chaos's mechanics, and 2, that the events of Noah should no longer be possible post-collapse, given every world layer is set to parity with reality. So unless an observer were to reintroduce delusional science parameter adjustments and observe a separate version of Noah that happened before Steins Gate, it's hard to picture how Steins Gate Reboot works post-collapse. From what we've seen so far, they have removed Chaos Ed references from the reboot version of one of the backgrounds they've unveiled so far. So there is the possibility that Steins Gate Reboot takes place in a world where the events of Chaos Ed Noah didn't happen. And that is interesting. Obviously, there's only so much that you can say from one CG, but that is something to keep in mind. Another thing of note that some have paid a lot of attention to within Reboot's description is this specific line. As global conspiracies stir and timelines begin to twist, the curtain rises on a future steeped in chaos. Honestly, I think it's entirely possible that this line just doesn't mean anything. After all, it does somewhat align with what's written in the original Steins Gate Steam page description. But said people have paid attention especially to the words curtain and chaos. Part of Anonymous Code's subtitle is to step through the stage's curtain. And as for chaos, we all know what that means. Therefore, some have suspected that this could be a hint that Reboot might be connected to Anonymous Code after all. But I don't think this is the strongest piece of evidence. What I expect is that most of Steins Gate Reboot will match up with that of the original game, but the few narrative additions it does have will have some considerable implications on the overall series storyline. Honestly, even if the majority of the game ends up going the exact same way as the original, if it is in the post-Anonymous Code continuity for the series, that would still end up addressing a lot of questions, so I remain optimistic. With Steins Gate Elite, what they ended up doing was including a remaster of Linear Bounded Phenagram bundled with Elite to further incentivize people to purchase it. With Reboot, I wonder if they'll do anything similar. Like if Reboot does end up going off the rails with its narrative additions, maybe they could bundle a simple port of the original Steins Gate, like they did when Steins Gate 0 released for the PS4 way back in the day. But in any case, please let me know your thoughts on the latest news. Do you think it points more towards it being a conventional remake in the original continuity? Or do you think it points towards it being a version of Steins Gate that takes place in the post-Gaia reboot continuity? What do you think? Though with that in mind, Bossman out.